right, Louis Chabot. How y'all doing? So, for all of you that don't know, we have a mentorship program with our Radiant Rubies and our Building Better Men. And we have professionals that come and speak to them about different things. And back in, I want to say it was February, we had Ms. Sade Robinson come and speak to the children about mental health. And Ms. Kiera brought it to us, our attention, that Mental Health Month is in the month of May. So we came together and decided to put something on for you guys, a presentation, because everyone has mental health concerns. Either you have it personally, a family member has it, or a friend has it. And especially with youth, they deal with people every day and don't even know what they're going through. And how you speak to someone and treat someone can affect them, and you don't even know what they're going through at home or when they're not around others. So we want to bring more, because we don't talk about it. So we're going to talk about it tonight. So without further ado, youth, take it away.
Emily is a young lady who is currently struggling with depression. This mental health condition has significantly impacted her daily life, causing her to feel overwhelmed, sad, and disconnected from those around her. Despite seeking help from therapists and trying different treatment options, Emily continues to face challenges in managing her symptoms and finding joy in her daily activities. She is determined to overcome her depression and lead a fulfilling life, but knows that it will require patience, perseverance, and support from her loved ones.
You know, folks, life has been a roller coaster lately with my battle. There's this constant battle inside, a tug of war between past and the present. Why does my real father hate me? My stepfather barely speaks to me, and my mother tries to play all sides to keep the peace and expects me to just deal with it. And always compares me to my brother and sister because they get all A's and I got one B. I've heard him call me dumb and stupid so many times, I'm starting to believe it. It's like carrying a weight that no one else can see, trying to balance it all while pretending everything is okay. I've been through some stuff. Yeah, things that I wish I could forget, but they linger like the shadows in the corner of my mind. And it's tough, you know, keeping it all bottled up while putting on this smile like it's my armor against the world. And then there's school, going from the skinny girls who boys picked on to become the young woman, and they stare at me like I'm a piece of meat. And even when one approaches me like a gentleman, little does he know an upperclassman tried to take advantage of me at junior prom. And now because of that, I can't even look at guys the same now. I want to date, but I'm afraid because I've lost the last little bit of trust I've had in people. So I get labeled stuck up, mean, and whatever other hateful words they can come up with. On top of that, the endless pressure to excel, to be the best, just to make my father happy. So maybe, just maybe, he'll say something nice to me. And not to mention the part of me that wants to prove him wrong. That I am just as smart as my siblings, that I'm not weak, and that I'm very strong. But when you try too hard, when you actually care about your grades, suddenly you're labeled the teacher's pet, the one who thinks she's better than everyone else. Sometimes I just want to quit. Sometimes I just want to run away. Sometimes I just want to ball up in a corner and cry. But it's not about that. It's about trying to prove to myself that I'm worth something, that I'm not defined by my past or by what others say about me. It's about striving for more, even when it feels like the world is against you. So yeah, life's messy, and yeah, I've got my demons to wrestle with, but I refuse to let them win. I refuse to let anyone else define who I am or what I'm capable of.
Hi, how's everybody doing? My name is Sade Robinson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have been providing mental health services in Fayetteville for about 7 years, but I've been a therapist for 12. And so I speak a lot to adults and children about depression and what it is. And sometimes we think about depression as just being sad. And that's just this general statement, I'm sad. But depression is a clinical diagnosis that has to be diagnosed by a mental health professional. And so when we think of depression, it's not this mild thing that just kind of floats along. It's something that impairs your judgment. It impairs significantly your day-to-day living. Excuse me. So sometimes we see people that do not look like what depression is, right? So sometimes we say, oh, well, she doesn't look depressed. And sometimes those symptoms are hidden within. And so I tell people a lot of things about depression is just feelings. It's not really a physical thing that you can see for someone who's a functioning person with major depression, because you can lead an everyday life and people not know that you're depressed. So I like to give people like the book version of what depression is, because it's very important that you know what is major depressive disorder and feeling depressed. So major depressive disorder is a persistently depressed mood that happens for predominantly like more times out of the week than none. You'll have significant suicidal ideations or past suicidal attempts. You'll have feelings of worthlessness, significant weight loss or weight gain, excessive sleeping or not being able to sleep enough. Things that you found very interesting to do in the past, you no longer want to do. There's a whole list. And so as a clinician, what I do is I go down this list of things and I ask people, like, what are their specific symptoms? So an example, I play softball. And sometimes you lose interest in the things that you absolutely love. And it sometimes doesn't necessarily mean you're depressed, but if you're depressed, you absolutely do not want to do it. You don't want to talk to your friends. You don't want to talk to your family members. People call. You're screening phone calls. You go to work, you put on a smile, but you come home and you lay in the bed, you close all the blinds, you really don't even want to watch TV. I think the newest part that we're not adding in the DSM is we are like aimlessly scrolling Facebook, Instagram, TikTok on our phones to escape from the reality of our real world when on the inside we're really, really depressed. So I always tell people, just because you don't meet one or two of the criteria doesn't mean that you're not depressed, but it may not mean that you have major depressive disorder. So I wanted to end with a few facts for you guys, or some statistics about depression. So across the globe, about 5% of adults have depression. 20.78% of adults, or 50 million Americans, live with mental illness. More prevalent amongst women is depression, and we say that it's more prevalent amongst women. Why? Women report it more, so men are not going to report it. They're going to hide it, and we call that the guise. It's this guise that men have to be tough. They're not allowed to experience mental health, and I'm a big advocate for men and expressing when they are having mental health symptoms, because a lot of men will commit suicide because of it, because they're hiding it. And everyone's like, no, what? We didn't know that. Well, men aren't allowed to express how they really feel, and that's really unfair. So 1 in 10 young adults in the U.S. are living with depression that disrupts their school, work, or home life. Young adults age 18 to 25 are at highest risk of a diagnosis of major depression. So I want to give a COVID-19 fact, because we didn't really talk about how much COVID-19 changed what depression looked like. We were all sitting at home trying to just figure it out, something that never happened before. So from August 2020 to February 2021, the percentage of adults who were diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder went from 36.4% to 43.5%. Depression affects all ages, and I wanted to do a one for children. So 1.9 million children aged 3 to 17 have a diagnosis of depression. And then some fun facts. Hawaii is the lowest rate state in the United States that has anxiety and depression, and the highest state is Louisiana. All right, thank you.
Sarah is a young lady who has been struggling with anxiety for the past few years. Often she finds herself feeling overwhelmed with worry and fear, making it difficult for her to focus on her daily tasks. Despite her best efforts, she constantly feels on edge and finds it hard to relax or enjoy social situations. Sarah understands the impact that anxiety has on her life and is determined to seek help and learn coping strategies to better manage her condition. She is a strong and resilient individual who is committed to improving her mental health and overall well-being.
You see, folks, life hasn't been easy for me. I've been battling this thing called anxiety for as long as I can remember. It's like a constant companion, whispering doubts and fears into my ear, making every step feel like a leap into the unknown. I don't even like talking about it, let alone talking to a group of people. It's hard to explain what it's like, the way your heart races and your palms sweat for no apparent reason, or how every decision, big or small, feels like a monumental task, weighed down by the fear of making the wrong choice. It's crazy how just deciding on to wear to school can be a battle for me. Maybe you're wondering what caused all this, why I'm wired this way. Well, there are many pieces to that puzzle. It's like a tangled web of genetics, upbringing, and life experiences that have woven themselves into the fabric of who I am. Growing up, I was surrounded by expectations, pressure to excel at everything I did. My parents meant well, of course, but their high standards became a breeding ground for my perfectionism, feeding my anxiety with every missed mark and every perceived failure. And it's easy for them to say, oh, you're just overthinking it, and it's not that serious, gaslighting me and thinking it's okay, like I'm just making up my feelings and just saying things so that people will feel sorry for me. And, well, then there were the bullies, the ones who made it their mission to tear me down brick by brick. Their words cut deeper than any blade, leaving scars that may never fully heal. I guess you could say they helped sow the seeds of doubt that still haunt me to this day, laughed at my struggles to my face, talked about me behind my back, and even asked me if I'm okay and if I need help. Like, help? Really, dude? But despite it all, I refuse to be defined by my struggles. I am more than my anxiety, more than the sum of my fears. With the support of my loved ones and the tools I've gained through therapy, I'm learning to rewrite my story, one chapter at a time. So if you take anything away from this, let it be this. We all have our battles to fight, our demons to face, but we are not alone in our struggles. Together we can break free from the chains of anxiety and find the strength to embrace life in all its messy, beautiful glory.
Hi, my name is Jessica Jones. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I serve children and adults, and I am super excited to be here to talk to you about anxiety. So let me tell you a story. Imagine one day driving down the street on your way to lunch, and all of a sudden you look in your rearview mirror and you see a man who is crossing a busy street. All of a sudden, you start to feel nervous. And before you know it, you witness him being hit by a vehicle. You stop your car. You're frozen. You don't know what to do. In that moment, in this story, that's me. I witnessed someone be killed. And from that experience, I had anxiety. I was scared to drive. I was scared that I was next. I was scared that death was following me. My heart used to race when I used to drive. I used to always feel nervous. Anxiety was now a part of my story. Anxiety is one of those things that affects us all. We all feel anxious. Imagine if you're going to a theme park and you're really excited and nervous about getting on a roller coaster. Sometimes we become fidgety. Sometimes we become extremely talkative. That can all be related to anxiety. But as they talked about today, there are symptoms of anxiety such as your heart racing, shortness of breath, excessive worrying. Those are all a part of anxiety. And when they start to impact your functioning, going to school, going to work, doing things that you used to enjoy, that's when anxiety becomes diagnosable, especially when it's persistent. So there are many different diagnoses of anxiety. We have generalized anxiety disorder, and if I had to diagnose myself in that moment, I would have diagnosed myself with acute stress disorder, which also falls under an anxiety disorder. And so whenever we're experiencing anxiety that has overtaken our lives, that puts us in a place of hypervigilance where we're always looking out for a threat, then anxiety is a problem. And so how do we then deal with anxiety? There's so many things that we can take a part of. One is grounding, being able to take your mind off of the excessive thoughts that are happening and really focus on mind, body, and soul in the present. So there's something that I do in therapy, and it's focusing on your senses. 5 things that you can touch, smell, taste, hear, and see. And that allows you to refocus from the anxiety to present. Something else that is very helpful is deep breathing. Being able to take a pause, being able to reconnect with body, because it's important, again, to refocus from the anxiety to where your reality is. Anxiety can have us forecasting things that may not even be there. It could have us thinking, what are people thinking about me? Do they like me? Are they laughing at me? When truth be told, that may not be the reality. And so we have to put in these tools in order to decrease anxiety. Other tools that we can use is distraction strategies. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of distracting, but I do understand that it can be very helpful. Being able to take your mind off of the anxiety through talking to a friend, talking to a therapist, laughing, or just reconvening what you were doing before the anxiety came. Another thing that you can focus on is having something in your hand. So if you're experiencing anxiety in school, I know sometimes you've probably seen other people tapping their pencil or fidgeting with something. It seems like they can't be still. Usually that's helpful in being able to decrease anxiety. Another thing to think about whenever it comes to anxiety is that, as with any other emotion, it's not dangerous. Anxiety won't kill you. It is a feeling, it is an emotion. It can be managed, or you can flourish with it. Imagine having the thought that I'm worried, yet I'll still go. I'm afraid, but yet I know I can do this. Because 2 things can be true. We can live with anxiety and still flourish, but we have to do something. So remember that anxiety can be defeated with action. Thank you.
Alex is a complex and deeply troubled young man. Despite outward appearances of strength and resilience, he carries a heavy burden of darkness within, consumed by overwhelming feelings of hopelessness and despair. Alex grapples with inner demons that threaten to extinguish their light. As the shadows loom large, Alex must navigate a treacherous path towards healing and self-discovery. Will he find the courage to confront his inner turmoil and embrace the glimmer of hope that flickers within?
You know, folks, life has a funny way of knocking you down when you least expect it. It's like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering on the brink between hope and despair, unsure of which way to fall. For as long as I can remember, I've felt like I've been drowning in a sea of darkness, the weight of my own thoughts dragging me deeper and deeper with each passing day. There's no words to express the pain I feel. I'm told it will be okay. But how long do I have to wait? I feel like I've waited long enough. Thoughts of ending it all now would end my despair. They say there's no pain when you die, and I just don't want to hurt anymore. You see, it's not just sadness or loneliness that consumes me. It's a suffocating emptiness, a void that no amount of love or support seems to fill. And try as hard as I can to escape it, the darkness always finds a way back in. The hate of the world continues to build up inside me, and the voice of God gets harder to hear, but I know He's there. You might be wondering, what brought me to this point? What demons have I been wrestling with behind closed doors? Well, the truth is, there's no easy answer. Maybe it was a constant pressure to be someone I'm not, to live up to expectations that feel impossibly out of reach. Or perhaps it was scars left by past traumas, wounds that refuse to heal no matter how hard I try to ignore them. And then there are the people around me. Those who claim to care but seems to miss the mark every time. They offer empty cliches and meaningless reassurance, but their words fall flat against the deafening roar of my own self-doubt. I know they mean well, but they'd be better off just leaving me alone because they come with no substance that will help me heal. But amidst the darkness, there are glimmers of light. Strangers who offer a hand in the darkness, who see past the facade I wear and reach out with genuine concern. It's amazing how the people that barely know me understand me better than the people who are always around me. They see me for who I really am and want to talk me out of the darkness. It's hard to trust them, but it's easy to believe their words. It's hard to trust others, to believe that anyone could truly care about someone like me. But in the end, it's a small acts of kindness from unexpected sources that remind me.
All right, so we want to tie together how depression and anxiety kind of influence suicidal thoughts and ideations. So, just spoke about trauma. So, a lot of people ask, where does depression, anxiety come from? And a lot of times it stems from trauma. And what is trauma? A lot of people ask. The definition of trauma has changed over the years. We used to just signify it as it had to be this extreme thing that happened to you. But a lot of times now, we're acknowledging that emotionally, trauma can affect you. And emotionally, I always talk to my teens and my kids because sometimes trauma and PTSD can be a kid that's not heard and not seen. And you walk through life thinking that you're not heard or seen by your parents. And that can be a multitude of things. Yes, you have clothes on your body, Jordans on your feet. You've got friends, they come over, but emotionally, who takes care of these kids? And not, hey, how was school? But a deeper feeling within them, acknowledging that kids go through depression and anxiety, which is why it typically fuels suicidal ideations and also suicide in kids.
So as therapists, I mean, honestly, we see it so often. And it's in children as young as in elementary school into adult life that people are coming in and they are feeling a sense of hopelessness. And they're feeling as if there is no light at the end of the tunnel. And so life is so difficult that the only relief that they can have or that they can see is through ending it all. And so there are some people, to be real, who have suicidal thoughts, but no plan and no intent. But still, because they're so overwhelmed with life, they have these thoughts that it would just be easier. A lot of times I hear from moms that I'm just tired. I'm drained. I don't know what else to do. I don't have the support that I need. And so at this point, I don't know what I'm going to do. Thankfully, though, there are protective factors. There are those things for all of us that keep us here on earth, whether it's your faith, whether it's your children, your responsibility to others, whether it's any reason for living. We also see for people, pets. Keep people here on earth. So remembering that suicidal thoughts and suicide is not far from us. And we can't have the mindset that it does not exist in the church, because it does. There are people who are struggling in their thoughts. They come into church on Sunday morning and they jump and they shout and they praise and they go home, and yet things are still the same. And so remembering that, your brother and your sister, as Sade spoke about, with children, they need to check in too. Not just how are you doing or sister, I'm praying for you, but really being able to dig into what's going on. How can I better support you? How can I show up for you? Because again, suicidal thoughts and suicide is a real thing.
So I like to end with statistics because numbers, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. So I always give statistics about anything that I do. So suicide is the third leading cause of death in people ages 15 to 24. Each day, 10 youth in the United States commit suicide. More than 20% of teens have seriously considered suicide, and there are increased rates with youth of color and youth identifying with the LGBT community. From 2011 to 2021, the CDC reported that 13% of high school girls attempted suicide and 30% of them seriously considered it. And then two last facts that I wanted to give. The highest suicide rate in the United States is in the state of Wyoming, and the lowest rate of suicide is in the state of New Jersey.
So the last thing is just remember, if there is someone in your life who is speaking about suicidal thoughts, threats, or attempts, you want to make sure that you're getting them help. Yes, prayer is good, but we want to be able to get them some help. And a number that you can remember is 988. If you or anyone you love is struggling with any types of suicidal thoughts, that's the number that you can dial.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our mental health presentation by our Radiant Rubies and Building Better Men program. I am your host, Alexandra Medina. Our speakers were Sister Amber Johnson, Sister Aaliyah McCrindle, and Brother Daniel Smith. Thank you to our actors. Special thank you to our special guests, our health professionals, Ms. Sade Robinson and Jessica Jones. We would also like to thank Pastor Stackhouse for allowing us the opportunity to present this presentation tonight. To Sister Kiera Geiger for her help with organizing this event and behind-the-scenes work. To Brother Anthony Boyce for having the vision to put this together and for writing and directing this mental health piece. And to the Christian education staff, mentors, and volunteers who helped make all this happen. Special thank you to all our parents and guardians who have brought us to our practices and support what we do for this church. Thank you all for coming out tonight. And those of you who are watching at home, I will now turn it over to Brother Boyce.
Didn't they do a good job? Yeah, I'll give them another hand. Yes, please. And thank you to our health professionals, Ms. Sade Robinson and Ms. Jessica Jones. Thank you both. All right, so next what we're going to do, because we got some time, we had the youth write down questions that they wanted to ask our health professionals. So our youth are going to go down there, they're going to grab the questions, and they're going to read them, they're going to answer them, and if we have time after that, we'll allow you all to ask questions as well.
All right, so the first question is it okay for me to hate myself and to bruise myself?
So the answer would be no, as far as hating or bruising. Whenever we think about bruising, that falls under self-harm. And so whenever in that type of situation, that likely means that there are a lot of emotions that are not being managed. You may be feeling overwhelmed. You may be feeling depressed. You may be feeling a lot of pressure. And so what's important in those moments is to be able to reach out to someone and talk about what's going on. What we find for a lot of teens who deal with self-harm is because they don't feel like they have any type of outlet. They don't have a safe space to go to. And so it's important to be able to find a safe space. If it's not your parents or your guardians, that's okay. If it's a friend, that's okay. If it's a therapist, that's okay. A pastor, a grandmother, that's okay. But it's very important to be able to remind yourself, too, of who you are and all of the amazing things that you see within self. I know sometimes it can be very hard to see the positives and to have an optimistic outlook about life, but really working to see, well, where am I winning at in life? What are some good things that are going on? And it's also going to be important to really build supports. Have friends, have positive people around you who, when you can't lift yourself up, they've got you.
How can someone avoid depression?
So one thing that we always teach in therapy is you cannot avoid feelings like depression, sadness, happiness, anger, disappointment. I think that's where we fail as people. We're trying to avoid emotions that are naturally, and I say it in therapy, even though they tell us not to talk religion, I say they're God-given emotions, and they have to go somewhere. So you have to feel the feel. You have to sit in it. You have to sit in it all the time. And once you sit in it, you know what it does to you, and then you're able to respond. You're able to react differently. So avoiding, no, you can never just not. That's an unnatural thing for us to think that we can do.
What do you do when you don't feel anything?
What do you do when you don't feel anything? Well, for a lot of people, they come into therapy and they say, I don't feel anything, that I feel very numb. And truth be told, that means you're feeling something, that you're feeling empty, maybe lonely. And so it's important to learn how to identify what you're feeling. And sometimes it can be very hard to put it into words. And so that's why it's important to be able to surround yourself with people who can help to bring that out of you and maybe ask questions to see, what's really going on. But I will say it's not something that isn't common for young people, for adults to come in and say, I don't know. I don't feel anything. I'm numb. And a lot of times that can mean you're avoiding your feelings because they feel so uncomfortable. And it's hard for, I think, most of us to sit in certain emotions that are uncomfortable. But it's remembering that, as with anything, we can learn to manage our feelings.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of Jessica, it's not that we're really numb, it's that we're emotionally immature. And not like I'm an immature child, it's that we don't have the emotional intelligence to say that we are something other than happy, mad, sad. There are different types of happy, different types of mad, different types of anxiety. So sometimes you can be happy about something and you cry, and you're not understanding that you're not really sad because you're crying about being happy. You could be ecstatic. So there's deeper words for deeper feelings, and our emotional intelligence is sometimes here, and we don't want to take that step up to learn what are the different types of happiness. So I always recommend that everybody download the emotion wheel. And if there is an emotion on there that you do not know the definition of, which you won't, I promise I still don't know all of them, look it up. Go to dictionary.com and literally Google every emotion on the emotion wheel so that you have an understanding of exactly what is it that I feel.
What are some signs of mental health?
So there's so many different signs. So that's a general question. So if I think about depression, signs of depression are like oversleeping, over or under eating, feeling sadness all the time, feeling worthless. If we think about anxiety, it's excessive worry. So we're always like keyed up, worried about something happening. If we think about bipolar disorder, it's a shift in mood, so you're up and down. If we think about personality disorders, so there's a range, people shifting from one personality to another. If we think about, there's so many. So if it's this thick book, and we call it the DSM. And so there's so many different symptoms that can present. Only a professional would really know how to dive in and ask the right questions, if that makes sense.
And if you're not acting like yourself, or if you're around someone and they start acting very differently, then that may be a sign that something is happening internally. So you do want to pay attention to, am I no longer doing things that I once enjoyed? Am I no longer social? Do I no longer want to, hang out with my friends? Then that can definitely be a sign of mental health.
How does depression, anxiety, or suicide build up, and how can you tell someone's going through it?
So as far as building up, so how does depression, anxiety, and suicide build up? Well, it's not checking your emotions, the lack of self-awareness. And because for all of us, our body gives us warning signs that something is not okay. So if you think about if you're experiencing nervousness or you're experiencing fear, there's something that's going to happen in your body. Like you guys talked about, your hands maybe start sweating when you're a little nervous. So our body is going to give us those warning signs that something is not okay. And it is our responsibility, in order to take care of ourselves, it's our responsibility to then say, okay, I feel like I'm not okay. And so we have to be willing to take self-inventory to see where are we really at before it becomes something that is so overwhelming that then it feels like it is outside of your control.
For a little self-disclosure, I always know when my anxiety is getting the best of me. I get butterflies in my stomach. I always feel it. I'm like, oh, I know something is going on, because it starts in my stomach for me. So you have to know like what your body does on a regular and what it doesn't do. And I know as soon as I'm feeling the butterflies, I'm starting to rack in my brain. All right, what happened today? What happened 10 days ago? What happened a month ago? You really got to filter through your brain what you're feeling, what has happened to you. Figure out what happened in that moment, because it could be something that triggered you that literally happened 20 years ago, and then something happens that reminds you of a little piece of it, and bam, you're triggered, and you're reliving it, but in a different way. So you just really have to know your body, like Ms. Jess said.
What are some of the less major causes of anxiety?
The less major causes of anxiety. So that is up to a person. So what might be little for someone might be big for someone else. But when we see, as a mental health professional, when we come in, we're like, whoo, somebody got a little anxiety. That's like, like a breath of fresh air for us. So a little anxiety may be that like someone's struggling with like regular everyday life stuff because of childhood trauma. So I'm a trauma specialist. I started with kids. So for me, when I see somebody is like, oh, it's childhood trauma, for me, I'm like, that's easy. I already know the signs, the symptoms, what to do. And literally that's like physical symptoms, work stuff, school stuff.
Do we have someone in the audience that would like to ask a question?
Thank you, my dear. A question was asked, and I understand that we cannot avoid depression. But I would like to ask, though, what steps do I take when I sit in depression? I recognize that I have to embrace it, but how do I move on from there?
Okay, so that's a good question. A lot of times you have to identify where the source of your depression came from. What we think as people is that it's something that's happening in the moment, but 9 times out of 10, it is literally something that has happened over time, and your body literally can no longer compose itself because it's built up. An analogy that I use in therapy is the rug, right? So we as people, we sweep everything under the rug, right? And if you're like me, baby, I'm going to sweep them all perfect around all 4 corners. But what's going to happen? As much dirt as I'm sweeping under there, the rug is still going to lift, right? So the more that you say, I know it, I identify it, but we're sweeping it under this rug, it's still there. So you literally have to take it and move it out. And then remember, every time you lift a rug up, there's still going to be dirt every time. So sometimes it never goes away, but you have to deal with it and put it elsewhere. Because some things can be taken out and you're done with it. It's no longer something that affects you. And then there are mental health things that are lifelong that stick with you forever.
And so it's remembering, too, that you need coping skills. I tell my clients all the time at their first appointment that they're coming to me with an empty toolbox, and it's my job to fill their toolbox. And so being able to have coping skills, once you process through the trauma or the triggers to the depression, there has to be then skills that you're putting into everyday life to help combat the feelings that may show back up. As Sade spoke about, depression for some people is something that they're going to have to live with. And so there may be a long period of time, though, that they are in remission and that things are going good. But then something in life may trigger those emotions and those symptoms to come back. And so at that point, it's important to go to the toolbox, utilize those tools so that you can still navigate everyday life. So again, another thing that I like to tell my clients is for some of the symptoms that we have and emotions, we just have to learn to take them with us and still flourish with them. And so again, being sad, okay, yes, I'm sad, but I'm still going to show up and go to work. I may need to take a break, but I'm still going to show up for my children. I'm still going to be present for different things in life. So it's just remembering that once you process through, it then still takes action after the fact.
So I am, of course, a nurse, and can you guys talk a little bit about the chemical imbalance, the serotonin level? Because we as a culture, we have been conditioned to believe that being on medication means you're crazy. But just like you have problems with your blood pressure, with diabetes, with heart issues, you have problems with your mind. So can y'all just, I don't know if that's outside of your scope or is that more like an MD, medical doctor, but can you talk a little bit about the chemical imbalance in your brain and you may need some medication?
So we can speak generally. So what we usually do for a person who is really struggling with those symptoms, coping skills is not working. So what we as clinical therapists do is that we refer either to a primary care doctor or psychiatrist. And honestly, you hit it on the head, is that especially with depression, chemical imbalance. And so as with everything else, if we have something that is going on with our body and we're unable to see change, positive change from what we're already doing. So blood pressure is a good example that the doctor tells you, okay, you need to change your eating, get physical, and we'll come back in 3 months and see if you need to be on medication. And maybe you work out and you change your eating, but it still doesn't change. Well, your life is still important, so they may say you have to go on medication. But it's remembering that you want to be able to couple what is going to be best for you. So not everyone needs medication, but again, if we are going through the process of therapy and things are not changing, we're not seeing any type of progress, it is something that we do present to all clients who are in need. And again, you're not crazy, because if you have high blood pressure, you're gonna take that medication, I would hope. So if your physical health is important to you, your mental health should be important to you, because your mental health can 100% affect your physical health.
To piggyback off of chemical imbalances, specifically depression, and I can't think of what the acronym stands for, but there's medication called SSRIs. And what they do is suppress a certain part of your brain so that you don't experience depression as much as you would normally do. It also helps with addiction, and I didn't learn this until I had a male client who had a pornography addiction, and he got on depression medication from his MD, and it suppressed his addiction to that and alcohol as well. But what it does is it suppresses a neurotransmitter in your brain, and so your neurotransmitters are these things that send signs from your body, from your brain throughout your body. So it tells your arm to move, it tells you how to feel, it tells you what you want to eat, like just so many different things in your body. And so when they're imbalanced, there is nothing that talk therapy can do. it has to be medicated. So like Jess is saying, we can do talk therapy with the client and they can do the work. So there's a difference in a client not doing the work when they leave and a client doing the work. Hey, Miss Jess, I'm doing this. When I get home, this is not working, this, and this. And that's when we make a referral to a doctor to say, hey, we've tried this for X amount of months. This treatment plan is not working. The goals are not going anywhere. Maybe this client needs to be evaluated for medication. And medication is a real thing. I tell people I'm against first prescribing medication, but I am as a clinician like, hey, what I'm doing is not working and they need something in addition to.
Yes, good evening. I was just trying to find out any way possible we can touch on social anxiety. What is the best way to approach it and how to deal with it? Thank you.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Social anxiety is real. And so it's as in with any anxiety, is making sure that you are setting yourself up for success. And so you're putting in those coping skills necessary. And because we don't want to get to a place where we're now avoiding social situations. That's not helpful. We were created to be relational. So it's important for us to be able to be social. And so there may be some type of skills that you have to put in place in order to be social. So you may have to prepare your mind. Okay, I'm going into this space. I'm going to set a goal today. I'll talk to 2 people if I'm networking. So now I'm talking about me now because I have a lot of social anxiety. And so like I'll walk past you and don't even say anything, but it's only because my anxiety is really high. And so being able to, whenever I get into these spaces where it's time for me to network, I always set a goal. First of all, I'm going to tell myself, oh, you're going to be amazing. You're going to talk to people and you're going to smile. So I affirm myself. And then again, I set a goal. I'm going to speak to 3 people. And shout out to Xavier over there because he gave me the idea from Workforce Development over there. Just a shout out. But he gave me the idea. You speak to 3 people. Once you've done that, you can go home. Because I've exposed myself in a space where I had fear. And so it is important to be able to push yourself. Take people with you if you need to. But again, social anxiety is a real thing.
And to piggyback, I always tell my clients with social anxiety, sometimes social isn't, you have to make it what it's like for you, right? So one of my clients doesn't like to go out at all. So for him, being social is actually going somewhere, getting out the house where there are people, and he may not so much interact with them. Little by little, I'll speak to the hostess versus just nodding my head when she asks me, is it just me? I'll say yes, or I'll ask her how she's doing when I'm walking back. It can be minor things, and I tell people what's minor to me can be major to someone else with a mental health diagnosis.
All right, I know we got a lot of questions, but the good news is we got to stop here. We're going to do one more, but they are going to be in the fellowship hall with booths set up to speak to you to have questions. We got one more here, and then we're going to have to, we got to be on time, little shopper. So, so one more question, and then we're going to have to disperse. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to say good evening to you all. And I was just sitting here thinking, as much as I love our children, and if they are going through depression, isn't it wise for the parents to seek help for them at an early stage and stop and don't try to do it themselves? Because most of the time our children won't talk about certain things. But if the parents does not try to fix it themselves, put them in therapy so it does not go so far, and let them know that they are not afraid to go to a therapist and bring it out early. Thank you.
So I want to speak on that, and a lot of my parents, I like to say I'll fight with my parents in therapy. Children are the way they are because of the environments that they are bred from. Okay? So let me tell you, you can stick your child in therapy, and this happens to me every time. I don't have a problem with this child in therapy. They talk their feelings out. They tell me how depressed they are. They cuss a little bit, because y'all some cussing teens. But they literally are talking through it, managing this stuff, and guess what happens when they get home? They're going back into the same environment that you're bringing them out of to learn something new. So before we want to throw kids into therapy, we got to think about the generations that are raising the kids. And no offense to the older generation, you guys were raised in we got to do it, we got to figure it out, doing the best we can with the tools that we have. And you guys weren't given the opportunity of just go to therapy, and it was so widely accepted. So the major thing that I think the parents of our teens now and the parents of those adults have to remember that this is a different age where it is very accepted to go and seek mental health, even as the parents.
Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with if you decide to put your child in therapy, there's nothing wrong with collaborative therapy. We love for our parents to come in and say, oh no, I don't mind being a part of a therapy session or two. Like, no, come in so that you can learn the tools that the children are learning within the therapy session. And especially in our household, so you think one of the things that I put in place for children a lot at an early age is to be able to take a time out. If they are feeling overwhelmed because you're telling them you need to go do this, your grades are bad, this, that, and the other, and they need a time out, in therapy, I'm going to give them that tool of a timeout. But if they come in your house and you're telling them something, and then they go to say, I need a timeout, and start walking away, that belt might come out. That's not what we want. So we need it to be collaborative. So if you are going to put your child in therapy, make sure that you are a part of the process.
And don't perceive it as disrespect. I tell parents, like, sometimes everything is disrespect when kids go against them. I always teach my kids, there is a way to say things to your parents that can be received. So it's a difference in, hey, I need a timeout because I'm not sure what I'm feeling, or I need a timeout. Right. Like, there's a big difference. So it's about teaching your kids how you want them to communicate. We're expecting kids to manage emotions and stuff when we got adults that can't do it.
Good evening, church. I do want to mention, I know they said that would be the last comment, but for you that have young teenagers or middle schoolers at home, there is an app for Cumberland County Schools called the Alongside app. So they can log on to that with the parents' permission, of course, and they can click on that and they can talk to the, I think it's like a bot. But if it's something serious, it's actually, they get connected to a therapist. So please allow your young people to sign up for that. Amber is actually, like, I want to say the face of it, but she's on billboards around town.
Okay, Amber.
And then as well as Jessica Fikes. I know y'all probably know Jessica as well. So please allow them. That is another tool I feel that will help them. Thank you.
Before we go, I just want to thank you guys for having us. It's really important that we're able to speak about mental health in a church setting because sometimes people don't want to blur the lines of religion and mental health, and it's necessary. I tell people all the time, I pray to God, but I also have a therapist that I talk to as well. And as a therapist, I tell people all the time, I might have went to school to learn like technical things, but the things that I do in therapy, I'll be like, God, what we finna do with this person today? So God put people in places where you're supposed to be. So don't think that we can't help because it's not of God. God puts us in place. You go to the doctor. But thank you, Anthony, for inviting us. I really appreciate the opportunity. You guys did amazing. To be able to come up and speak about mental health is a big thing. So thank you, guys.
Thank you both of you. I really appreciate y'all coming out. So, like I mentioned, they're going to be in the fellowship hall. There's going to be a table set up. They can answer any other questions that you may have. I am told also to tell you there is a light refreshments. Very light. So, thank you again, youth. Y'all did a wonderful job. I'm proud of y'all. Thank you. Reverend Abraham, so I'll turn it to you.
I'm going to do the benediction. Good evening, Lewis Chapel. And give it up for our mental health advocacy. And I just want to echo, you have a mind, body, and soul. A mind, body, and soul. And you got to take care. Well, this is a soul shop. That's why we come to church. But God is a counselor, the Holy Spirit, and I spoke about the Alongside app a couple of weeks ago. Alongside means Holy Spirit. So God has put things in the earth to get you the help you need. Don't let your help stop here. If you need additional help, they're going to be in the fellowship hall, and you can seek that information. Stand as I give the benediction, please. Heavenly Father, bless our pastors where they're at. Minister, oh God, to every heart, body, mind, and soul that's represented here tonight, oh God. Let us go in peace, but not from your presence. We love you, and we celebrate the women in our lives as we look forward to Mother's Day on Sunday. Now unto him who is able to keep us from falling, the only wise and true God that has both power and dominion in heaven and on earth, be upon us as we depart from this place, but never from your presence. In Jesus' name, amen.